What's up, guys? In today's Christmas special, we're going to be building what the birthplace of Jesus may have actually looked like. According to the Gospel of Luke, Mary and Joseph came to Bethlehem for the Roman census, and Jesus was born in a stable because there was no room in the Cataluma. Now that word doesn't actually mean an inn, it means a family guest room inside a house, which suggests Jesus wasn't actually born in a separate stable, but inside a family home, in the lower space where animals slept at night. So today, that's exactly what we're going to be trying to be building. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background context on why we think that it was built in a family home, ancestral family home, rather than an inn. We just do a base out of some polished diorite right here. So Bethlehem was a small country village in Judea. It wasn't a town with commercial inns or large buildings. It was just a few hundred people living in clustered stone and mud brick homes. It was about 500 to 1,000 people living in Bethlehem at the time, as believed by historians. The Roman Empire basically required a census, which meant everyone had to return to their ancestral home, where they were born basically. So for Joseph and Mary, that meant Bethlehem. So they had to travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem to stay somewhere in Bethlehem to take the census, while Mary was obviously pregnant. Now, because the village was obviously crowded from the census, the guest rooms in family houses, the Cataluma, were likely already full, which is why Jesus' birth didn't happen in the upper room, but likely in the lower domestic area where the animals slept. So when you read in the traditional nativity story where it says, oh, they went to the inn and there was no room at the inn, it is likely a mistranslation of the original story, and it's likely a mistranslation into English and other Latin or Germanic languages to say it was an inn rather than a Cataluma, the guest room in the house, as inferred by the original Greek translation. And this is described in the Gospel of Luke in the Bible. Now what we're doing here is we're actually back to the actual building itself. I'm doing a base, right? So I'm doing a base of polished diorite, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to set out this base in the front here. So I'm going to do, on the right, I'm going to do a stable, a domestic indoor stable, and then on the left hand side I'm going to be adding some sort of kitchen area and then an entry / pantry area into the house. Now that is all going to be arranged around the central courtyard. So as we just remove a little bit of space here, that's going to be arranged around the central courtyard, which would have been the entrance to the back of the building, where the main domestic private areas of the house would have been, from the front wall. So this is kind of arranged like a small compound, and this is why likely then in the story of the Nativity, then you have the shepherds coming here, because people were likely agricultural people, shepherds, and the shepherds likely were out in the fields at this time of year. Meaning that the stable itself didn't have any sheep in it, or had less sheep in it, because the shepherds were out in the fields, which meant that Mary and Joseph could stay in the stable rather than the Cataluma, which was likely full. So I'm just going to be separating this out. So on this side here, I'm going to have an entryway or a pantry area. Then its back area here, I'm going to be putting some domestic space. And I'm just going to debate, I'm just seeing, I mean, this might be a little bit deep, but we'll see as the video goes on. I really don't know how this is going to look like, so it might end up being this absolutely massive thing. But I think the aim that I've got here is I'm trying to make it look like a whitewashed home that is somewhat resembling a traditional Judean home of that period. So I'm going to be just putting up this wall of calcite, so I'm trying to make it look whitewashed with a mix of different stone materials as it goes up the building. And then maybe we can put like a little bit of extra smooth sandstone on the top. So what I'm doing here is I've built a bit of this wall, and I'm going to be basically taking a bunch of spruce buttons, some signs as it starts raining, and I'm going to just add a bunch of different wood details on the front. Now the thing is with these buildings is that it is unlikely that they would have been totally made out of timber, or would have had large timber elements. And if they did have timber elements, they would have been made of different bushes and different shrubs that they could have found in the area. So it would have been smaller, lesser valuable pieces of wood. And we're going to see that reflected in this build today. So what we're doing now is, as I've said before, we're going to be doing some smaller pieces of wood. So I'm going to take some campfires. So I'm going to put some campfires on top of the stable area. So I built these walls, I built these columns that are running up to the ceiling, and I'm basically just going to be placing a bunch of campfires over the top, because these are smaller, they look like less solid pieces of wood. They're like thinner trunks of wood, if you understand me. And this reflects the type of vegetation that you would have had there around the region, as an area that probably would have been quite deforested and was scrubby and arid, that there wasn't going to be much in terms of big trees. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to put these campfires on top, and that's going to serve as the roof for the main stable area, as you can see. Now, the next thing I'm doing here is I'm just going to be filling in some fence gates. So I'm going to basically block this off, this stable area, so the animals can't escape in theory. And then I'm going to be replacing the floor. So I'm going to be doing something as a mix of like sand, coarse dirt, maybe a bit of grass as well. I mean, I'll see in the end of the video. It might change this one. But you want it to be a very, very rough like floor area. I mean, they likely wouldn't have totally paved this floor area because it's just where the animals are going to live. But then in the main domestic areas, they likely would have had a proper floor, something that was properly done. And we're going to reflect that. So I'm just going to put some indication of some sort of kitchen here. And then this might be the back of the house here. So as we do the top of this house, so the upper rooms would have been used for the main like human living area and guest rooms. So that's likely where the Cataluma would have been, where it was full at the time of the census. And the lower rooms itself were adjacent caves housed livestock at night, providing warmth and practical care. So that's what we've got at the bottom of this. So we have basically the storage, the livestock area. In the bottom of the house, I'm just putting some spruce fences around the side as a bit of structure. And then oftentimes we had flat roofs. So what we're doing here is we've got some flat roofs, and they would have been workspaces. So what I'm building here is kind of like a flat roof area. And it would have been like a workspace, or it would have been a sleeping space as well. And we would have had practical materials that were really simple, such as limestone, mud plaster, small bits of wood for support and to add lighter areas to floors and whatnot. And there would have been no glass windows, obviously, no decorative furniture. I mean, this is not like a medieval building, and it was a very modern thing. And then you might have had an area in the bottom down here in the courtyard where you would have had like a campfire or somewhere where things could have been cooked, maybe like a drying rack for meat. But then like in this right hand space over here where the stable is, this is a place where a newborn could be safely placed because it is a secure compound. It didn't really have many animals in it because the shepherds would have been out in the fields with the animals. It would have been a perfectly safe place to put a newborn baby. So it makes sense in the actual story of the Nativity that Jesus was born in the domestic stable of the house. So as I've said before, we're just going to be making a workspace on top of the flat roof. So this is a place where realistically people could have slept, but you know, it's not the type of place where you want to leave a newborn baby because it's out in the open. And what would have been common there is you would have had hawks, you would have had eagles, so it's not a safe place for a child. And it would have had very, very few small windows as well, with maybe like a wood lintel inside the window, which we're doing right here. But again, I mean, these buildings were very, very simple and very, very functional, and it reflects the kind of tough and modest birth of Jesus that is told throughout history, but is also told by biblical historians as well. And what I'm just doing here is I'm just going to be putting some buttons, and these are going to be like the structure that is holding up the bit of the roof that is sticking out of the side of the plaster. And again, we're just going to be putting some little windows. And you would have small windows, as I've said in previous videos, because in arid conditions like you would have had here in Judea, you don't want to have many big windows. You don't want to get the sun and the sand into your house. You want a little bit of light, but it's not really a decorative feature at all. It's a luxury in the modern day that we have so many windows in buildings, but back in the day, they would have had small windows just for a bit of light, a bit of air, but really the smallest window they could have possibly had is what they would have put, because they don't want the heat to get into their house. What I'm going to be doing for the ceiling, or the roof, and I've done this a few times in a couple of other videos and tutorials, is I'm just going to be doing a mix of sandstone and birch, because it looks like it's this worn plastered roof on top here, so that's what we're going to be doing right here. So now that roof is done, you have this nice flat area that you can climb up to. And what we're going to be doing now is we're just going to be adding a little bit of a nicer entrance, a bit more of a solid entrance into the house itself. Just by adding bits of diorite and some polished diorite to the front of the house to match the actual materials of the walls themselves. And then with a couple more slabs around. But this is all kind of matching the same colour palette that we've done in many of the desert buildings and like Middle Eastern, Mediterranean buildings. And it's typical of that first century time period of the Roman Empire of Judea, which would have just been traditional houses and wouldn't really been any Roman buildings in terms of the houses that normal people would have lived in. And here what I'm doing is I'm just going to be adding some spruce trapdoors on the ceiling, and that's going to be like the joist structure of the ceiling. Just a little bit of extra detail. And then doing the same in the stable, but actually in fact I'm going to do it in another distance or another way, just so it runs in the opposite direction to the campfires above. So it just looks like it's a cross lattice that is running in the ceiling. Like so. It looks pretty cool. Now on the roof I'm just going to be adding some extra little sleeping areas. And then towards the front door area, I'm just going to be placing a couple of brown banners. So these are going to be the entry curtains to stop basically all the dust and wind coming into the front of the house. Then through here, I'm just going to be editing a couple of things. So I'm just taking some spruce trapdoors and I'm placing them underneath the tops of the doorways, just to add a little bit of extra detail and a bit of colour difference as well. Now this next step, we're going to be building the manger. Now, Mary and Joseph placed Jesus in a couldn't place Jesus in a crib. They placed him in a manger, and contrary to many Western nativity scenes, this was likely a stone trough carved into the floor or the wall. So I'm going to carve it into the wall here, and it's just going to be a very, very simple stone trough, but I'm going to add a little bit of white carpet on top to make it look like a newborn baby could be safely kept in that manger or the trough in the side. But this was nothing that was really fancy. I mean, this was a typical functional structure for something like a sheep that we're going to put down here, and it would have been something that a sheep would have fed out of and would have been likely made of stone. Now we're just going to be doing a little bit of stuff on the inside, so just adding a couple of little areas for storage, maybe a little bit of extra structure as well in the ceiling. So I'm going to be adding some joist elements that are going to be running across, so just putting full blocks, so just doubling up the slabs and placing full blocks of spruce planks across the top of the ceiling, and then just a couple of extra lanterns in here as well, just a bit of light. Then I'm going to be adding a couple of tables, so just some really basic spruce trapdoor tables. So it's likely that the furniture would have been made out of something like local shrubby timber or whatnot, with then some little bits of furniture, but nothing really fancy, nothing really highly detailed either. And then maybe you would have had some clothes drying up inside as well to keep them out of the sand outside. Now coming to the upstairs, we just want to have a ladder that runs up to the top, nothing like a staircase, just a simple ladder that comes up to the top floor. And this is going to be the Catalumas. This is going to be the guest room out here towards this side of the building. And it's going to be just a really, really, really simple bedroom. Just really simple with some barrels, some brown beds, maybe some little extra details, some pots, carpets, but something that's really, really basic. Whereas over here we would have had the main sleeping area for the owner of the house, which would have just been an upstairs room, placed with a bed, some pots, maybe some clothes were hanging out to dry over here. So maybe we can put some banners up here, which look like some clothes to dry maybe, or maybe some clothes hanging up. But something like that, really, really simple, really, really modest. And this is typically what many ancient houses would have looked like in the Middle East. I mean, we do have like variation between different regions, but the reality is that most ancient houses of people who were ordinary people, who were agricultural workers, who were carpenters, who were builders, they would have been very simple stone or mud brick or adobe houses that were basically boxes, and they would have had different details and whatnot, but they were relatively quite similar. Now I'm just going to be putting a little kitchen cooking area over here, so I'm just going to be doing the simple Minecraft thing and just whacking some furnaces in here. A cauldron, I mean this isn't particularly historically accurate, let's be honest, but this bit over here, you know, you could use this as a survival kitchen area with a bit of carpet, some pots, something that is meant to replicate or imitate something that looked like that. And then we're going to be doing the same thing over here, so we're going to be actually making a sleeping area for Mary and Joseph by the manger. So just a simple carpet, bits of hay, something like that on the floor. I mean, you know, as the guest room upstairs was full, they would have had to slept somewhere else, so they would have been sleeping down here in the stable area. But you can see they're sat together, which is quite nice. And there you have it, basically. I mean, so this is likely what, and my interpretation as well, of what the birthplace of Jesus might have looked like. It might not have been an inn. It's likely it would have just been a family house in Bethlehem, either Mary or Joseph's ancestral home in Bethlehem, and they would have been able to stay here in the stable, the domestic stable area in the house, and that's likely where the story of Jesus comes from. So guys, what we built is a 1st century Judean home that is humble, functional, and alive for daily life. And it's likely that Jesus' birthplace wasn't a snow-covered barn. It was a family home where the guest room was full, and the lower space became the first nursery shared with animals. So the Bible's words, the Kataluma, helps us see the Nativity not as a Western European stable scene, but as it could have really been. Ordinary, practical, and profoundly human as well. So guys, thank you for joining this historical build today. Merry Christmas from Bethlehem, the 1st century. And I hope you've enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe here if you're new. And until the next one, goodbye.